Have I Got News for You, Saturday at 9 on CNN.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
If you or a loved one have mesothelioma, we'll send you a free book to answer questions you may have. Call now and we'll come to you.
800-821-4000.
We're back out live with White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller. Stephen, I sincerely apologize for that technical difficulty. It seems like some wires got crossed. You were describing the president's legal authority as you see it under Title X. My question was whether the administration still plans to abide by that judge's order restricting any National Guard troops from being sent to Oregon.
Well, the administration will abide by the ruling insofar as it affects the covered parties. But there are also many other options the president has to deploy federal resources and assets under the U.S. military to Portland. But I was making the point that under federal law, Section Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has the authority anytime he believes federal resources are insufficient to federalize the National Guard to carry out a mission necessary for public safety. So it's important to understand that in Portland, ICE officers have been subjected to over 100 nights of terrorist assault, doxing, murder threats, violent attack, and every other means imaginable to try to overturn the results of the last election through violence. The most important point I want to make today is that the number 1 and 2 items in the GOP platform in 2024 were to turn back the border invasion and carry out the largest deportation program in American history. Since Inauguration Day, there's been an orchestrated campaign of terrorism and violence against ICE officers. Of course, we saw the recent sniper attack against ICE officers. They're publishing their families' photos online. They're threatening them with murder. They're threatening them with death. And they're physically attacking them in the street each and every day. And yet, shamefully, the mayor and governor in Portland and Oregon have refused to render aid, leaving ICE officers to street fight every single night against these terrorists.
You make the claim of terrorist assaults and violence attack over 100 nights, and yet the judge overseeing this case says that that's untethered from reality. And local officials on the ground say that Trump's assertion of what's happening in Portland, that it's war-ravaged and burning to the ground, is far from true. I looked at the police data, and police have made something like 70 total arrests since June. And there are no reports of buildings being burned to the ground. The White House cited a guillotine being rolled out as like a public display of rebellion, but there isn't actually a threat that these demonstrators are going to overthrow the government. Are you concerned that that response weakens your legal argument?
No, they are actually, as we speak, trying to overthrow the core law enforcement function of the federal government. Boris, this is, I think, where we're talking past each other. When ICE officers have to street battle against Antifa, hand-to-hand combat every night to come and go from their building, when they try to exit in a vehicle, when they are swarmed and surrounded and they try to tip the vehicle over, when people bring weapons to an ICE facility to try to engage in direct violent assault against ICE officers, what is the purpose? It is to prevent Immigration and Customs Enforcement from carrying out the mission the American people elected them to do. Their objective is to make it impossible for ICE to carry out ICE enforcement. When in our history have we tolerated unlawful riotous assemblies night after night around FBI buildings or ATF buildings or DEA buildings? This is the textbook definition of domestic terrorism, using the actual and imminent threat of violence to keep federal officials from doing their jobs. And unless we send in troops and resources, then we will continue to bleed federal law enforcement resources in these street battles. It's absurd, it's unconstitutional, and must be put down.
You cited Title X a moment ago, and under that statute, you need either a foreign invasion, a domestic rebellion, or a disturbance that inhibits the ability for law enforcement to carry out federal law. But ICE is still conducting operations. Like the facility hasn't been overrun. It seems like local officials are fairly in control of the operation if ICE is still able to execute its mission, is it not?
Do you have any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized to fight these domestic terrorists, Do you have any idea how many resources are spent
Stephen, you keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt down and
terrorists,
track
but isn't that hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night, they come, they assemble, they fight, they try to impede movement, they physically attack. For what purpose? Because we had an election, Boris. We had one. What's the purpose? To use actual physical violence to change the result of the election, to say you cannot turn back the border invasion. Do you have any idea how many resources we have had to redesignate to deal with these street terrorists?
You explain that. Let me ask the question. Let me ask the question. You make the case that these are terrorists, but in what we've seen thus far, the actual incidents of people inciting violence and not responding to law enforcement attempting to disperse them are not an open rebellion. I mean, again, you make this characterization as though they're terrorists, and I do wonder if it is potentially a problem in the future for Republicans. If a Democratic president someday calls the National Guard to a red state over what they see as open rebellion, but is what amounts to a demonstration that gets rowdy. I mean, is that not a fear of yours?
They're posting pictures of their kids because it's a demonstration, and they have a sniper on top of a building firing a high-caliber rifle at an ICE facility because it's a demonstration, and they are engaged in vehicle ramming.
But the National Guard isn't being sent to Texas.
Because it's a
the National Guard
demonstration.
isn't being sent to Dallas, where that sniper was.
Because the Dallas Police Department and the governor of Texas, well, you walked right into that one, have responded to every call for assistance and help. They gave a stand-down order in Chicago, and they gave a stand-down order in Portland. Do you realize that there's 11,000 federal law enforcement officers in Oregon? That's larger than the size of the FBI. Local and state police are resourced to deal with this kind of riotous assembly, but they have refused. They've been given a stand-down order. So
they've arrested some 70 people since June. They've been arresting folks on the ground. They've been arresting folks on the ground. They refute what you're saying outright.
We literally have the 911 audio of this stand-down order in Chicago, and we have documented inside of DHS every single unresponded to 911 call over the recent weeks and months. Let me present you with a counterfactual. And I know you're doing your best to try to be even-handed here, but think about this for a second. Joe Biden let 15, 20 million illegal aliens into the country. Pick your number. It doesn't matter for the purpose of this. What do you think would have happened if anti-migration demonstrators had assembled outside of every Border Patrol and ICE facility for year after year, physically attacking every ICE officer and border agent who is releasing illegal aliens, physically attacking the immigration lawyers representing illegal aliens, physically attacking the personnel at DHS, setting migrants